Have you ever wanted to learn how to ice a cake quickly but still make it look amazing? I'm going to show you a simple way to ice a cake, to decorate a cake that will look way more intricate than what it really is. It'll make it look like you put a lot of effort into something that maybe takes you 5 to 10 minutes. So the main steps I'm going to show you include how to level the cake, how to stack the cake, how to do a proper crumb coat, and the best icing tips that you can use while you're working, and how to add texture to the cake, like this, so that you don't have to have a perfectly smooth cake. Okay, so this is the sample. We're going to set it aside now. Okay, so my hands are clean. Gonna flip the cake. I've got 3 layers here. Flip it out of the pan. And this is called a cake leveler. It has a little piece of wire on it. On the side we have little notches so that you can adjust the wire to where you need it to go. So I've already adjusted mine. You're going to just slide it across the cake like so. And then you can pull the top of it off. This creates a flat working surface so that you don't have to worry about having a lopsided cake or anything like that. So we're going to have to do this for all of the cake layers. I'm going to move this aside. The leveler takes a little getting used to. Typically now, I tend to just use a knife. I can pretty much eyeball it at this point and tell when and where to cut. And it's a lot easier for me anyway. But most people learn how to use with a leveler, so I figured that's what I would do here today. Alright, so we put the cake tops aside. That's what we call them around my house, is the cake tops. And a lot of people like to eat those, like my husband. He comes around while I'm cooking and snags them. As long as I don't need them for anything else anyway. Alright, so we're going to make sure this is level on the board, in the center of the board. And I've got a pretty big board here to use. I thought that would be more fitting for today, for the speech. Now, I'm going to do a chocolate icing, but I'm going to do a cheesecake filling with it. So see, I've already loaded my icing bag. You can do whatever type of filling you want. I do a lot of strawberry. I've done crushed cherries before. Peanut butter seems to be really popular. So what we're going to do though, before we do a filling, is we have to create basically a dam around the cake. That way the filling does not run out onto the sides of the cake. This is extremely helpful if you are doing something pretty liquidy too. So this is the dam, and that gives us some room in the middle to add the cheesecake. I'm going to snip the edge of that off. You don't want to go above the dam. It'll make it tip over when you're done. Take an offset spatula, and that's what this is here, and just kind of spin the turntable a little bit, level that off. That way you don't have any unevenness happening. So since all of the cake layers are already leveled, I'm going to take the second one, set it right on there, look at it from the sides, make sure that it looks all the way even, and create another dam to fill again. Here comes the cheesecake. It's pretty liquidy. This is going to be a cake that's going to want to sit in the fridge when you're finished with it for sure. And I'm going to scrape this off. Just so. Level it again. You absolutely do not want any sort of crookedness going on at this stage of the preparations. It's going to make the whole cake offset and off level. Okay, so for the top layer, no, it doesn't matter how many layers you're doing, 2, 3, or whatever, you're going to want to take it. And see, this is kind of crumbly, but the side that's set flush into the pan is not. So you're going to need to tip it upside down, put it on the cake. Give it a little push or two, look at it, give it a spin, make sure it doesn't look uneven. I'm going to wipe the crumbs away. Okay, so this is how you stack, level, and fill the cake. So what I'll show you next is called a crumb coat. You're going to take the icing. You're going to start here, see how it's kind of dented in. We're just going to spin around like this, and that's going to fill that in. You're going to want a really thin layer of this all over the cake. This is typically what I do, is create like lines, space them out a little bit. Now you take your offset spatula and you hold it against it, and you're going to let that scrape the icing around so that it fills in all of the gaps. Gaps are not good for this part. So what a crumb coat is going to do, it's going to lock in all of the crumbs, which is how it gets its name. It locks the crumbs in so that the cake, whenever you're putting the final layer of icing on it, it will not show the crumbs through the final layer, because that doesn't make for quite as pretty as a cake. You don't want to have that. You're going to make sure you do the top too. I'm out of icing, so I'm going to put my spatula down. Just a little bit more. I've got a bare spot here. I'm going to fill that in. You don't need much at this stage at all. Any spots you see that are just completely bare. Hey, Emma. And then the top. This part does not have to be perfect at all. Any perfection is going to come later on. And that's only when you're trying to get a perfectly smooth type of cake. Alright, so this is the part where you would let it set in the fridge. You're going to want to let it rest for about 30 minutes or so in the refrigerator. That's going to take this coat here. It's going to lock it in and harden it up just a little bit. Since it is buttercream, it will get more hard in the refrigerator. So, due to time and being the only person here recording, I'm going to skip the fridge part, but I think I can handle this. Alright, so what we have next, this is a really wide tip. You can get, I'm using all disposable bags today, but you can buy bags for this that are sturdy and that they're reusable. One side of it is jagged, and that'll create a really neat effect, and then the other side is smooth. So what we're going to do here, we're going to put the jagged side against the cake so that the outside of the cake is going to be smooth. I'm going to hold it against it and kind of push that layer on by squeezing the bag. This wide tip was pretty much a miracle worker for me whenever I discovered it, because I was just putting the icing straight on with a spatula or with a spoon, but finding the wide tip that puts it directly on the cake, it helps me out a lot. It helps if your end goal is to have a perfectly smooth cake too. Ours is not today. I'm going to show you one of my favorite ways to ice a cake. Alright, so we're just going to squeeze the rest out onto the top. Now here I have a cup of really, really hot water that makes this is my second offset spatula. It makes the offset spatula warm up. Once the metal is warm, it'll make the cake a lot smoother and easier to work with. Makes the frosting melt down just a smidge. So I'm going to tap the water off of it. Just a little water on there is fine. Alright, so Here we go. We lay the edge gently against the cake. And like I said, we're not going for a perfect cake here today. So you do not have to have absolute perfection right now. You just want to kind of smooth over it, smooth it out. Okay, and now on the top. Just kind of push the icing around gently till you get it somewhat smooth. Like I said, perfection is not what we're aiming for. I want to show you what I like to do because I have a hard time making a cake perfectly smooth myself. Wipe the excess. Always key to wipe the excess. After you've done that, drop it back into the hot water. Now what we need to do is inspect the cake. Look for spaces that have not been filled in. I've got a big one down here. You can see it from the side that needs to be filled in. I'm going to take the bag with no tip on it. Put just a little on there. Look for anything else, any other gaps in the icing. You want to make sure it is fully covered. Nobody wants a bare spot of cake with no icing on it, right?
Okay.
All right. Shake the excess water off again. Do this again. Do this as many times as you need to until you have the cake as smooth as you want it. Typically, you just want to go in one direction. You can stop and hesitate. Swipe it back and forth like this if you need to. But mostly you want it to keep going and flowing in one direction. You got a gab. There we go. Turn it over to the other side, and I'm just going to flatten the top down like so. And that pulls in anything that we've pulled off the top. And also, we just created a pattern on the top of the cake. See? And it tried to move. Let's get it to settle back. Move your hands, please. All right, scrape the excess. Let it get good and hot in the water again. Should only take a couple seconds. So I'm going to show you how to put like a pattern in the side of the cake. And this is what's going to counter not letting it be smooth. This is what's going to make it look good so that you don't have to have it all the way smooth. Tap that off. Now, try to do this backwards here. We're going to start at the bottom. Hold this down. Hold just the edge to it. Start turning the cake. When you get back to your starting point, raise the cake up a little, or raise the spatula up on the cake a little. So it's like we're digging into it, sort of. We're putting almost a spiral texture into the cake. You do this all the way to the top. Let's put a little of that back on. We took a little much off there. Now, since we're not going for perfection, you can go back over it. Add a couple more swipes anywhere you think you need to have them in there. Since I did that backwards, I have a few spots I need to touch up. Alright, I think I'm done with this part. So see here, we've got a spiral texture going on now. Okay, the next step is I'm going to take a star tip. It's a jumbo star tip. They come in all sizes. We go for the jumbo. It's called a 1M. Has a star shape to it. I've already cut a hole in the end of this disposable bag. So I'm just going to drop the tip in. Push it all the way down. You're going to want to make sure that you're not covering up any of the tip. The design on the tip. If you are, cut a little bit more off because it's going to affect the pattern that we're going to put. See the top? It needs a little bit more to it. So I'm going to take the same bag we used earlier, and this is one of my favorite tricks here. Drop it right in. No need to start another bag, no need to fill another bag, nothing like that. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to pick a spot on the top of the cake. I'm going to squeeze, and I'm just going to give it just like a little wiggle. Now, we'll create like a little fluff of icing. Go to the opposite side of the cake. This way it's going to look even. Same thing, just a little fluff. Work from one side, go to the opposite. This is going to ensure that you're using about the same amount each time and that you're spacing them out as evenly as possible. Okay, so there's that. One more thing that I wanted to do with this cake, I have a giant tub of chocolate sprinkles here. So we're just gonna drop a few on the top. You can use whatever you want. Some people use cake crumbs. I've done that many times. Just gonna do this. Get all, cover it as much or as little as you want. Use whatever type of sprinkles you want, and you don't even have to use sprinkles at all. Okay, to the final step. We've got a bit of a mess on the cake board here. So I'm going to take our paper towel. And I just go ahead and dip it right in the same hot water that I was using for my spatula. And I get right up here close to the cake without touching it. And I just turn and try not to use too much pressure. Try not to move my finger around too much. I just want to be able to scrape the excess off the board so that it looks all nice and neat and tidy on here.
Mama, who's that cake for?
It's for, I guess it's for us, Emma. Okay, so there you have it. We have a nice little chocolate cheesecake cake, and this is my helper, Emma. All right, thank you.